started. And I am going to be starting from, I'm going to be starting from the assignment. And so technically I'm going to begin once I get to my Ivy so I can bring you to the library, but I always like to start with the assignment. And before I get into that, I will just go ahead and welcome you. Welcome to this Human Services presentation. I'm a Indianapolis-based librarian. My name's Lois, and for a living, I give instruction over everything related to research. And I also assist people with different things at Ivy Tech because I'm also an IVYT 111 instructor, and I've worked here for 3 years. So I feel like I kind of know my way around enough. And so I love giving the presentation about the Human Services Project because I love the social workers in our community. I love that people are investing in mental health, and thank you for being part of this ambitious field where you are very much needed. And I think this is a good project because it really, and I like it that it's at the beginning because it really helps you start thinking about why you're here and who you want to work with. And so this is a community project that has a couple different pieces to it. But one of the things that they want you to do, that's the reason why you're here most likely, is because it's research-based and they want you to speak to a librarian. But in terms of what you're doing in this assignment is you are identifying a population you hope to work with in the future or a human services challenge you would like to learn more about. Some examples can be with families, with rural children experiencing homelessness, victims of natural disaster, end-of-life care, addiction in rural areas, mental health services in rural areas, etc. Being specific will help you compose your answers. For example, employment rates for people with disabilities is going to be easier to research than writing about unemployment. Okay, great. We're going to clarify all that. And that is this comes from the horse's mouth, as some say, of what you're supposed to be doing. And so you are going to be thinking about the area of social work that interests you. And then you're also going to be tying it to a specific population. So that's one part. It also states that you are to connect with your librarians for sources for your subject. And I think it goes down a little bit further to talk a little bit about Ask a Librarian, which is one of the ways they recommend you reaching out to us. And if we go down a little bit further, it says providing the name of the librarian that you contacted and whether it was helpful or not, different materials. Great. Okay, we're going to cover all of that today and a little more. And so I'm a librarian. I'm talking to you about how to do this, but I'll tell you about what stage you're going to be reaching out to other librarians and how to do that. So we always like to start with this at the beginning of the human services presentation, just so we're all clear that we're all on the same page. I'm here to help you accomplish the things that are listed on this page, and I want you to be successful in your project. And so, and it's during this time that the librarians throughout the state anticipate a lot of business from our human services students because we know you need us right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to my Ivy. And that's where I'm going to start this presentation officially now that we've gone over the rules or the assignment details. And we are going to start with my Ivy because this is the most straightforward way of getting to your library homepage or library site before you inevitably, hopefully, just bookmark it. And so up here in the top left-hand corner in the search box, if you type in library, you're going to get two different results. You're going to have library that says nothing beside it, and then you're going to see library statewide. Now, when I click library with nothing beside it, what comes up is my home campus. So my home campus is Indianapolis. And this is where I go to a lot when I am talking to an Indianapolis specific audience. And so I know that I might have a handful of people on this call or people who I send this out to from Indianapolis. And so if they were to look at this site, they would see some things that are customized to our campus specifically, like our hours, our contact information, and so forth. And so this is what I do when I'm speaking to Indy students. However, sometimes, such as this, I'm actually talking to a group of people from all over. And so when that happens, I end up going with the library statewide site. And that's what we're going to use today during this presentation. And so the library statewide isn't better or worse than your home campus. It's just one that is more generalized and will do all the same things that your local one can do as well. Now, if at any point, and I'm going to go ahead and cover this for the future, but at any point you are like, I actually do need to get to my campus site, or I'm doing things for other classes. If you're on the statewide site, I mean, outside of just being able to type in library and that thing beside it, with nothing beside it will be your home campus. If you're on the statewide and Ivy Online site, library site, and you go to About, and you go down to hours and locations and you click there, you'll actually end up seeing all the in Ivy Tech libraries on a map. And then you can click anywhere. I think I saw somebody from Kokomo on that list. If I click Kokomo, this is going to take me to the Kokomo site where it has things that are specialized there. So that's just something to note. So here on the statewide and library site, it has a few things that will be very helpful for you that we'll be using to show you how to find sources. Start with Discover is one of the places that we look for researched or peer-reviewed sources, which is what you're looking for on this project. We also look down here in A to Z resources. If any of your teachers at any stage of your schooling at Ivy Tech says, I want you to find academic resources, peer-reviewed resources, or I need you to find support for your argument, what they're also saying is go here or go here, okay? And we're going to be searching here. Another thing that's helpful on this site is that Ask a Librarian tab. So if you recall, when we were here, they asked you to contact librarians for 3 possible resources. They also ask you to go here. So if you're on this statewide site, you see this Ask a Librarian tab. And if you click right here, what's going to happen is they are going to ask you, basically they give you an email template. They say, a lot of students will say something like, I need resources over homeless veterans and addiction, something like that. And they would type this in the question. They might tell me what they've already started, what databases they looked at, or even just say, I'm a human services student. I need this for my project. You give us your Ivy Tech email, your first and last name. You identify yourself as a student. You tell us what your home campus is, because this is how you'll be in contact with your home librarian. And then you're needing your information for a paper. And then you might want to type in Human Services 101. When you submit your question, what happens on the other end is we receive them and we answer them. And so when we answer those, our name is on there, our email address is on there. So for everybody here on this call and everybody who's watching this recording, if you click on this Ask a Librarian tab and fill this out, you'll get those requirements that are stated here, okay? And so that's lovely. I love it. And so that is a really quick way of doing it. Now, regarding your actual research, this is also where you will be doing, you might want to do some of it on your own. Now, if you ask a librarian to assist you with it, which is a requirement, they're going to do their very best to provide you with resources. However, a lot of you are also going to be trying to find resources before you start that process with your librarian, or you might find that you want to maybe add to what she has already given you. But either way, once you have that base covered, there's this whole other area that you have to be comfortable with, both for this assignment and moving forward. I mentioned that I've worked here for a while, and this is definitely, I can say with certainty that human services students continue to take research-based classes, meaning you're still going to have to go and find support so you can learn more about your job, your future employment. So we're going to go ahead and get started here at the Statewide and IB Online Library site. And we are going to start with Discover, because this is one of the places that we can look for sources. So you were asked, when we go to those requirements, you are asked to find 3 possible resources for your subject, okay? And so when you're here, if you go to A to Z resources and you click on this button, you're actually going to see, you see that we have 129 different databases. And these are databases that you can enter one by one by one. And you can think about this as shopping, or very similar to it. Like if you were going to spend your Saturday shopping, and if you went to one shop, then another shop, then another shop, that is what that A to Z resources does. It allows you to go into one shop at a time. However, when you go into Start with Discover, you can actually look at all 129 databases underneath this A to Z resources all at once. And so a lot of times I compare this to shopping at the mall. So instead of going to one shop on one side of town, driving another 5 minutes, going to another shop in town, you're just going to go to the mall and you're going to find what you want in all the stores because it's all under one roof. And so starting with Discover is a good place to go to look for sources. And but it's bigger. Just like one big mall is going to be a lot bigger than just going and shopping all over the city, shop by shop by shop. And so if we start with Discover, or any type of search or any type of research, it always is tied to language, and it's always tied to keyword searching. And you do keyword searching all the time because you're all products of the Google world. And so when you are shopping, when you're going to a new place using Google Maps, when you were researching IB Tech, or you were trying to figure out which classes you were taking, that is legitimately research. However, this is called academic research, and you're doing all of the same things. And so you're adding words to get what you need. And so really, when you are typing in your keywords, it's very clear to know how powerful your word choice can be. So if, say, I was looking up, I had this vague idea of what I wanted to study in my future, the population I wanted to work with. If somebody said, well, what are you going to do? Who are you going to work with when you're a social worker? And you were like, well, I want to work with people who have been abused. Okay, that's a good start. Now, abuse is a word. Abuse also is arguably kind of vague. Okay, but when I type in abuse without any other context and I click search, what I get is an intimidating number of results. In fact, I get something that is closer to nearly 5 million when I only type in abuse. And a lot of times, because we're all products of Google, we do get this little dopamine hit of victory because we have results. And in this case, we have 5 million results. But the secret that they don't always tell you when it comes down to research is that it's not about getting millions of results like Google has trained us to think is right. It's actually finding smaller results and finding exactly what you want out of those results. I mean, imagine if you just typed in shoes, like all the types of shoes that you would get back. If all you wanted was something to wear, if you were a mountain climber and you needed those shoes, okay? And so it really does, your language matters. So when I type in abuse by itself, that's That's not great. That's not a good way to start. And so when I see that I get 5 million results, I realize that I need to maybe add or change the wording. So in this case, maybe I'll start talking in my second sweep. Maybe I'll start talking about domestic abuse. Okay. So I've now controlled the type of abuse that I'm looking at, not just all the types that exist. And now when I click search, I get something like 203 million or 203,000 results, which is such a huge difference between 5 million that I get with abuse versus the 203,000 that I get with domestic abuse. Now, you see this and you might say to yourself, well, gee, the more detailed I get, inevitably I'm going to get less results, which means I'm going to get exactly what I want, which is a natural thought, absolutely natural. So let's try that. So if I was here and I was like, well, I want to study domestic abuse, but I live here in India, I want to talk about domestic abuse victims aged 40 to 60, Indianapolis, Broad Ripple. It's a neighborhood. That's what I want. Let's see. Search and nothing. Okay, so that's way too much. Now the computer can only compute so much. It is a certain type of database, and we don't have that kind of detailed information that I might find maybe in something that's like a government database or something that's gathers, data for all of Indiana. So I have to find a compromise. I have to find a compromise between domestic abuse and domestic abuse victims age 40 to 60, Indianapolis, Indiana. And so if I try this another time, this is another way of doing it. And in fact, this is where I'm going to start showing you some good ways of doing something like this. So research really does require that keyword searching, but it also requires punctuation. And so when I type in now, say I wanted to look at domestic abuse and mental health. If I did this, I would be giving the computer more information, domestic abuse and mental health. And when I say that, this is telling the computer to look at domestic, abuse, mental, and health. When it sees this word "and" between it, this is a command that I am giving the computer and saying, hey, I want resources that only contain these words, and they all have to be there. Okay, I want domestic and abuse and mental and health, all in every single resource that I receive. So when I say this and I type it in intentionally like that, and then I click search, you see I get about 14,000 results. Now that's great. I think that that's great. I think that we become more specific. That's the goal. But check this out. What if I put in quote marks around domestic abuse and mental health? And by the way, you've noticed that I'm doing things here and I've also been going back here. Either way is okay. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit, and I'm going to put quote marks around domestic abuse and then quote marks around mental health, because now I'm saying to the computer, I want you to look at domestic abuse as one term. And so when I say I'm looking for domestic abuse, they have to be together. And then I'm also saying, I want you to look at mental health together as one chunk, because I put these quote marks. It's almost like I put these barriers between them. But because I've still used this "and" here, what I'm saying is that they both have to be there in every article and every source that I see. So 14,000 without the quotes, click search. And now I have 1,900 results. And that is pretty amazing. When you really think about how staggering the differences are in results when you go from something that's nearly 5 million, because you go in with something that's sort of vague or not being very specific and saying, I want to study, I'm interested in victims of abuse, versus saying, I want to learn about people who are victims of domestic violence or domestic abuse and how it affects their mental health. And so when you say that to the computer or you communicate appropriately with it using that correct language and the punctuation, your results will dramatically change. Okay. Now, when you do this in Start with Discover, you get 2 columns on either side of all of these results. Everything here are results. Okay, so this is an article, this is an e-resource. Some of these are books. You can see which campuses they're at. So all of these are here in the middle. But we are not done. When we are looking at when we're looking at Start with Discover, these Ivy Cat results over here on the left are going to be in their Ivy Tech library catalog. So they're going to see ebooks. You're going to see books over on this side. This is the side where you find electronic resources such as peer-reviewed articles, okay? And so oftentimes I do think that there are just fabulous and really effective readings out there on topics such as this. But in an 8 weeks course, we really do encourage students to look at things here in the databases. Even if this is brand new to you and intimidating because you've only always looked at books or primarily because of the time, because this is week 2, you're a quarter of the way done already with the 8 weeks and you have to move. And so after you've put in the correct or better keywords, and then you've applied the appropriate punctuation if it's needed, then the next step is to apply some filters, okay? And so what we're going to do here is I always say to people, it tends to default to full text, but always double check. Nobody likes to just see the first 5 minutes of a film when you find it on YouTube and you're like, it's protected by a paywall. Okay. And the same idea is here too. You want the full article. You don't want just an abstract. Okay. Next thing you're probably going to want to put in is something called a peer-reviewed journal. A peer-reviewed journal is a publication that is filled with different articles that have gone through a rigorous process where other experts read the articles, they confirmed that the research was sound, and it got published. And so a lot of times teachers will want students to put in this filter of peer-reviewed, okay? So we see this. And then we could also put in this publication date. And this publication date is a good one to have. We tend to cap things or cap articles at about 5 years, even though remarkable studies have been done in the past, even stuff that have been done in the last 10 years. But a lot of times when we are looking for articles or we're looking for research, we want to find something that is as new as possible. We don't want to necessarily read unless you were doing something historical and you were really actually doing a compare and contrast. For you, since you want to do something in the future and you maybe want to know about domestic abuse victims or now, I mean, they're probably as a population a little bit different than in some ways post-COVID, post some of the things that we've experienced in the 21st century. So it does make sense that you want something that's current. So we go ahead and we say this with everything. I say this in English 111. I say this when I'm working with, students in comm classes, sociology classes. The only time I would say to open up that date further than 5 years would actually be if I was really actually working with a history teacher. So if you go ahead and include that, that is also going to chip away at your number. So right now we have 350 results, which I think is wonderful. It's wonderful because we went from this huge number of 5 million and then we, and then once we put in some appropriate language, and we added some quote marks, and we added some filters, everything got, smaller. And this isn't quite as overwhelming as 5 million. And so say that you wanted to have one of these, results, okay? Or you were interested in looking into one of these further. You're like, yep, all of these words look good to me. You'd be rolling your eyeballs over this green bolded writing, because that's the name of the titles of these articles. If you want to look at it, you would click this check for full access. And once you're in here for the check for full access, it's going to contain some good information. First of all, it's going to give you some words. You are keyword searching, and you may not know a lot right now about your topic. So this is a good place to look for words. I look at the subject terms. I look at the author supplied keywords, because I know I might use those later when I'm doing other types of research. Another thing I like to do is look at the abstract. An abstract is provided for you almost in the same way that the inside flap of a book contains certain type of information that, when you're browsing through a library or a bookstore, you're like, oh, I'm just going to read this inside cover. Maybe I'm going to buy it. Maybe I'm going to check it out, or I'm not. And so an abstract works in the exact same way as as that is just like, do you want it? Do you not? This is what it's about. Now, once you say yes, 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 I want this article. If you want this article, the next step is to access it. So in this case, we have two different types of access. We have this PDF access. We also have this online full text. Now, if you click on the PDF version, it's going to look a certain way once it spins and thinks about it a little bit. And the PDF version and the online version pretty much look the same. We'll go ahead and get the other one started, at the same time. So that's also happening. Because we're not going to be stopped by this. Oops. We also have this online full text. Yay. Okay. And the PDF is unavailable. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this one. That's fine. And so I haven't run into that before when the PDF wasn't available, but that's fine. A lot of times it'll have a PDF. It will also have an online version. So PDF, online, this is the first time it hasn't come up. But if I was looking at this online full text, this is what the article would actually look like. And so you can see this is it in its entirety. It's easily printable. It has different features that will help you in terms of documenting this article, because this is something that you're going to have to cite along the way. And so you could go to these quote marks and you could copy and paste. We have APA, we have MLA. I think you guys use APA, but I double checked with your teacher. So you could get that citation. You could also add this to your Google Drive. You could create a permalink. You could send it to yourself as an email. And another thing you can do is download it to your device or go here for printing. Another lovely thing about this is if you click on this globe, you can actually translate it as well. So say a language you feel more comfortable with is Spanish. If I translate this to Spanish, it typically happens pretty quickly. And once the translation happens, hopefully some ease comes your way. If this is something that is maybe standing in your way of accessing the information. You can also listen to this, but you can only listen to it in English. And so I would say for multi-language users or learners, consider this if this will help you. But that is how we find articles in our, in our databases. We start off by finding keywords, and then we add appropriate punctuation and we apply the filters. And if something isn't working the way that we want to, then we swap out the language and we try it again. And we try it again. And so instead of domestic abuse, maybe try domestic violence. Instead of domestic abuse and mental health, we also say and women. And so all of these changes of the wording will make a difference. So outside of this start with discover, you could absolutely do the same thing here in academic search complete. And so I'm not going to get very far into this because I want to make sure that we get through everything. But when we're on academic search complete, remember you're going to one shop versus the whole mall. So if I typed in, say, domestic abuse, or let's go ahead and say, yeah, domestic abuse. Oh, we get some other words here. Okay, maybe I'll go with the text predictor. You could always do that. So I could start typing that in. I could then type in mental health, and then I could say women. Now, if I wanted to put in my filters here, I would click peer reviewed. I could also do past 5 years. And then I would click search. Now, what does that look like? Okay, I get 641. Now, again, oh, and this one actually even came up as one of my choices. And so when you put in that information, you're going to get less results, but that might be a path that some of you prefer because maybe you don't want to start off with 5 million and start off small. But sometimes people, sometimes people like to start off with smaller so they're not so overwhelmed. But either way, I do either thing. A lot of times when I'm choosing, and again, as I'm scrolling down here, you can see if I wanted to access any of these, you can see this cited by. Say I wanted to look at this, infertility, stigma, and domestic violence. If I was interested in any of these articles, I could look at a PDF, online full text. I could also click into the title itself, and then it would show me what you saw when we looked at Start with Discover, like the title, the keywords or subject terms you might use, this abstract. So all of these different things are, this is another way that you might do some research. The final way I want to show you how to research is to click into A to Z resources and to go to subject-specific databases. So if you click on subject, and a lot of you, I'm going to go ahead and assume no matter what area you're concentrating on, it's all going to somewhat deal with mental health a little bit. I might be wrong. You're the experts here. But if I was going to look and say you wanted to go to get your ears pierced, well, you probably couldn't do that at Finish Line, most likely. And so you'd have to go to like a specific shop. And so if you were going to a specific shop, say you'd want to go to Claire's Boutique, you might want to think about your subject or your subject-specific databases as being like that, like a specific store for a specific thing that only has what you want. Like Claire's has earrings and headbands and all the things that people love. And so if we look at the subjects here and we scroll down a little bit, I would say for a lot of you, because you're dealing with mental health in some way or the other, you would maybe consider this nursing and health sciences database as a subject-specific database, and then filter databases. Once I do that, you can see that 129 databases turn to 17. And then a really great database that I like is this psychology and behavioral sciences collection. I think psych articles could be good too. You can do what you want. Let's see. Let's do here. And so again, if I start clicking into this, and in this case, if I typed in domestic violence, and then I looked at mental health, now I'm getting that. My peer reviewed, my past 5 years, my search. I get 174 results. So again, I could keep on adding words. I could take some words away. I can add those other filters. If I realize at this point that I want to add new filters to it, I could click on this all filters button and this will come over and then I could add more if I wanted to or change them. So that's something that's pretty nice too. But the truth is that you really do have a lot of options of where to go with this project. And, you're searching here, you're searching here, you're searching in here. And that's how you do it yourself. But also knowing that you can ask a librarian, they will also be able to assist you in finding articles if you fill out this template. Another thing, a lot of times our features, the software that we use for tutoring, that information, like once you've had a tutoring appointment, at least here in Indianapolis, that gets sent right to your instructor. So that's one of the reasons why in that template where it asks you what your class is and they're asking you all those questions, the computer is also preparing to send the conversation to your instructor later. So that's something to just note. But we all know that if you ask us for our name and our email, most likely is for your human services project. So that is a lot of information to cover in a short amount of time. But I think I've covered it. So with that being said, I haven't looked at the chat at all. If does anyone have any questions for the good of the cause? You're welcome to unmute yourself. Or I can just and I can take away this whole screen so you're not looking at each other. But if you want to unmute yourself and want me to maybe clarify something or go over it again, we have a few more minutes. Nathan, if you're talking, your mouth is moving, but I can't. Oh, do you have another helpful tip for APA? You know what, Casey, I would say that Yes, I do. I mean, we do have something called Purdue. I'm trying to think of what we have on the statewide level. Because I would say like your writing tutors on campus can help you out a lot with that. But if we are at this, let me go to the statewide site to see what we have here, because it's something I feel like we manage well locally. But in terms of, I would say this citing sources here, if you go to this writing and composition, there's something here called the writing process at Purdue OWL. And I would say if you're not already familiar with this, and that's okay if you're not, I would absolutely say that Purdue OWL is pretty much recognized in the Midwest as being the top place to get writing assistance. And so they have developed a huge slew of resources that are connected to all types of writing. And so I'm trying to see where we go with APA. Where that would be in here. General format, APA style guide, in-text citation, the basics. Yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I would recommend, is that because this also gives some examples on here. It also shows different ways that APA is used in different types of resources. Like for you all, electronic sources, if you're finding those on that those databases, if you click here, this will give you some information. And this gives you, this will show you what this looks like. So yeah, so going back to that, sorry, I have so many library tabs open. The statewide library and Ivy Online, go to that citing sources, go to that writing composition, and when it takes you to Purdue OWL, click in here and then search by APA. And your local campus librarians and or writing tutors should be able to help you with that if you get stuck. I mean, we could at least look it over. And I would say the writing tutors would be excellent if you can hook up with them. I see another question. Do we use you as a librarian that we talked to, and how do you get proof that we attended this webinar? I don't know. I don't know. That depends on your teacher. Because if your teacher is saying that attending this is good enough, then I am sending this out. My name is Lois D. Hoff. You're going to get I'll go ahead and type in. So I'll type this in right now. If it's okay with your teacher, yeah, Lois D. Hoff, LD Hoff at Ivy. Oops, let me see here. Then ivytech.edu, and then I'm Ivy Tech. So, I mean, if I am good enough, then that's good enough. But you might have a teacher who says, no, I want you to talk to a librarian. You might have a teacher who says, you can talk to a librarian or use Ask a Librarian. And so when we receive questions like that, that is something that you need to clear with your teacher, because your teacher overrides my opinion. So, but if this is it, I've given you my information. And so I'll be sending you a recording. So, I mean, you can screenshot any part of that you want. Are there any other questions? Yeah, thanks. You're welcome. Okay, cool. Well, last call, helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. And anybody who is Indianapolis based, we have a robust tutoring system. And so we'd love to talk to you, but basically we could talk to anybody if you don't have I know some campuses, their tutoring is different. So if there is ever a question, you know that we have it here at Indy. And but take advantage of all the student services that are out there, especially in the library and tutoring. You all have it in multiple places throughout the state, so take advantage of it. So with that said, I hope you have a lovely afternoon. I hope your gardens are growing, and good luck. You're almost done with this. I mean, we just started, but you're also almost done with this, because that's Ivy Tech. And so I'll see you later. Good luck with all of this. And again, thank you for being part of this really much needed profession, and go out there and be the best. Okay. Take care. I'll see you later. Bye.